Shortly, we'll be crossing back to Canberra for reaction from senior figures in both parties, as well as analysis from the ABC's team of political correspondents in the nation's capital and around the country. First, though, let's recap the key points made by both leaders during the debate. The Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, expanded on her much-maligned mantra of moving forward. She said Australia was a great country, but it could be better. She said she was passionate about educational opportunity. Ms Gillard said contentious issues such as asylum seekers and climate change needed to be worked through. And she said Labor had the better economic plan. For his part, opposition leader Tony Abbott said a coalition government would give families a fair go. He said his action contract with Australia would repay the debt, stop proposed tax increases and halt asylum seeker boat arrivals. Mr Abbott said the coalition would be better economic managers. He labelled the government as hopeless. So how well did the leaders perform? I'm joined in the studio by the former Chief of Staff to John Howard, Arthur Sinodinos, and former Labor Senator Stephen Loosley. Well, gentlemen, you've been watching. Arthur Sinodinos, to you first. What do you think?
Well, look, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought both of them had less nerves than I expected. And
Tony Abbott made the odd slip.
He did make the odd slip, but for a first time up, I thought it was pretty good. I thought Julia Gillard finished more strongly when she talked about confident and prosperous Australia and looking at the glass being half full rather than half empty. She used the word plan a fair bit. She would have been told to use that word because it's a word that people respond positively to. I didn't hear infrastructure or nation building or a really extensive agenda from the PM. She was essentially restating, I think, the main points of Kevin Rudd's agenda. In Tony Abbott's case, I think he made the case against the government quite well and really pushed strongly his paid parental leave scheme, which again has a problem in terms of the company tax, the increase that accompanies it. But other than that, I think he spent more time attacking rather than putting forward an alternative program. I think he feels that at the moment it's raising those negative issues is the more important thing in terms of the public's mind. Whereas for Julia Gillard, I think it was an opportunity to try and say a bit more about herself, and she did when she talked about her interest in educational opportunity and the rest. I didn't think either of them performed so extraordinarily well that you'd say it's all over. I would give it slightly to Julia Gillard, I think, just based on my own reactions without looking too much at the worm or anything else.
And partly because Tony Abbott went negative?
Partly that. I thought she finished more strongly, whereas I think he was concentrating on getting a certain message through. So I'm looking for a bit more on the coalition's agenda going forward through the rest of the campaign. Going
forward, Stephen Loosley?
I agree with Arthur. I think there were no knockout blows by either the PM or by Tony Abbott. I thought the Leader of the Opposition performed better than anticipated in terms of keeping his focus, and it was an attacking style that he adopted, but not an unreasonable or unrealistic one. I thought the PM showed a lot of polish, very, very focused, a lot of optimism in what she talked about, and I agree with Arthur that the finish was very strong. Was very strong. I actually thought she performed better than Kevin Rudd did against John Howard, and that's recognised as having been a very solid performance at the time. So I think it was an enlightening debate in terms of there was a good deal of policy substance there. As we discussed earlier, Ali, it did begin to focus on economy and economic management, their respective approaches. And I think people would have derived quite a bit about both leaders from the exchange tonight.
We talked earlier, though, before the debate about whether it was going to be a button-down affair. And Arthur Sinodinos, we didn't get any of that, I suppose what you were talking about earlier, hints of personality, sort of lifting the lid off it. It was a very controlled performance by both.
I think they'd both been told within an inch of their lives that they've got to be very careful about what they say or what they do. There was the odd slip on the way through nerves. But I thought, for what they had to do, they did it quite well. I would have liked to have seen a bit more spontaneity, but you always do because it's more interesting. But both camps will go away tonight feeling that their man, their